COVID, 9/11, wars and invasions, bombings and terrorism, riots, so many false flag operations, or so it seems, whether true or false. But without doubt, they all pale into insignificance when compared to the greatest and most important conspiracy of them all. The conspiracy to keep people in the dark, in ignorance, so that they fail to recognize their true origins, where they come from, their heritage, and indeed the power they possess. What is this heritage? Where do we come from? The answer, we should all recognize. We have always known it. But so many of us have ignored it or dismissed it. It has been ridiculed to the point where it seems the majority of people do not believe it to be true. Or worse, they vigorously state that it is a lie, which of course it isn't. One might ask, why are they afraid of the truth? And what have they done that they think is so awful that they prefer to believe and convince themselves and all who will listen to them that it is a lie? Yet it is no lie, it is a truth. A true fact that was recognized and spoken of by practically, if not all, cultures and races from the most ancient of times to today. And this is a truth that was recognized throughout the entire world, even from the earliest of times. Ancient people may not have known all the finer detail, but nonetheless, in principle, it was recognized. Its truths are encapsulated in every language, to the degree that they are largely considered mere words, at least today. Ones that lack substance or real meaning, simply as aspects of our vocabulary, expressions only, not to be taken seriously or considered to express any real truths, or so it seems. When this truth is spoken of, many people switch off. They don't want to know. They have been brainwashed, indoctrinated, desensitized and confused. They have been misled and lied to throughout their lives, to the degree that they believe nothing but what is in front of them, or worse, what their brainwashing or programming has told them to believe. People have also, or perhaps as a consequence, become apathetic. They have no belief. It is as though they live in a black and white reality and are reluctant to seek for some colour to add to their lives, and for themselves to discover what most ancient people recognized, and to search for its proof, the proof of their origins. And they should know that proof can be found. If I was to say to people that their origins probably date back tens of thousands of years, and to another world, perhaps a degree of curiosity would be aroused in some of them. Consequently, some may awaken from their slumbers, prick up their ears and dream of Star Trek and ETs and show an interest. So what of this other world of which I speak? I could say it is comprised of many dimensions, that in a sense we are all interdimensional beings. And in a sense, if not many senses, this is true, but more commonly this other world is referred to as the spirit world. Before anyone switches off and joins forces with the apathetic, they should ask themselves a question. They should ask, why does apathy abound? This reluctance to believe and to investigate what many of the greatest and most famous names throughout recorded history accepted as factual. These ancient philosophers, Socrates, 469 to 399 BCE, was one. He made statements such as, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, and the unexamined life is not worth living, and there is only one good, knowledge, and one evil, ignorance. He believed that goodness and truth and pure ethical and moral instincts are placed divinely in the soul. I would say he was absolutely right on everything above. Plato, 428 to 347 BCE, was another. He believed or accepted that the soul is the driving force behind body and mind, and that the soul is eternal. He too, I would say, was absolutely right. In more modern times, and since the middle of the 19th century, many of the leading open-minded scientists, including Nobel Prize winners, have, and by the utmost vigorous research and scrutiny, investigated the eternal nature of the soul, and proven to their complete satisfaction that we, the earthly personality, cannot die. These scientists confirm that life is eternal and an inescapable fact for us all. We require no passport or seal of approval from any religion. We can be a saint or a sinner to any degree, but either way we can never die, although we can never escape the consequences we create for ourselves by the way in which we live on earth. This is the greatest and most important conspiracy of them all. One may say that this is no conspiracy, it is simply a level of ignorance or a lack of interest. However, effectively it is a conspiracy, and who is to say that the truth of our origins has not been deliberately downplayed in order to keep us in the dark? For instance, more often than not, any fictional story involving a medium suggests that the character is a con artist with ulterior motives, usually greed. The mainstream media rarely, if ever, mention the great numbers of scientists who have and are investigating and providing evidence for an afterlife, as it tends to be called. Who is to say that there are not many people on this planet desiring us collectively, or at least in great numbers, to believe that there is just the one life, and that death equals oblivion? And there are reasons to believe that this may be so, and I will say more on this in a little while. Currently, or so it seems, ignorance in our true status as eternal beings, temporarily experiencing life in physical human form for a limited number of years before we return to our true home world, abounds. The reasons for this ignorance are many, but they include the consequences of misinformation and misguidance and being misled. These can be broken down into a few of the major reasons. First, although the order is of no significance, I will say it is the consequences of the failings of religions, particularly Christianity in the UK, because over the centuries they have confused people with theological jargon, dogma, ceremonies, plenty of huff and puff and fancy dress, sermons and finger pointing, but at the same time they have delivered no real answers, no proof to any discerning mind. Their answer to why anything happens is hopelessly pathetic. They may, for instance, say, only God can answer that, or it is not for us to question, or have faith, but really they are saying, go away, because we simply do not know, and therefore cannot actually supply any worthwhile answer. What has been the consequences of this failure of religions? It has been to repel vast numbers of people. Significantly, this has also caused many people to confuse the man-made beliefs and ignorance of religions with all that teaches of spirit or spiritual truths, and spirit life, and of a spirit world, with which we can communicate, a world where absolutely no belief, faith, a adherence to any religion is required or in any way necessary. In fact, blind faith in any dogmatic structured beliefs can be a handicap for us when we depart the earth life. Second, materialism, or an overemphasis on earthly possessions and wealth, is to a large extent another cause of earthly ignorance of our origins. The constant strain for some in simply earning a sufficient income to survive, and for others the never-ending desire for greater and greater wealth. Both extremes in their own ways distract the vast majority from any desire to investigate or even consider their origins. Coupled with mainstream media silence, the lack of genuine knowledge available via any religion, the general ridicule of mediums in fiction, even added to by some ignorant comedians, and so many people in a rush to and from work, and then to socialise or watch the latest episode of some soap. All these things contribute to the vast majority of people ignoring or dismissing the possibility of an afterlife and a desire to investigate and learn the truth concerning their true origins. The debunkers and skeptics and the atheists and the too busy materialists, together with the apathetic, may say to themselves, if science had ever proved that it is true that life is eternal, we'd all have been told. Well, you could be forgiven for believing that this would indeed be the case. But let me tell you now that this is the case. Scientists, Nobel Prize winners included, as mentioned earlier, have investigated and proven that life does continue beyond the physical. It is where we come from, our true home world. I could mention a couple of books that may help to convince any seeker who wants to find their own answers. One is A Lawyer Presents the Evidence for the Afterlife by Victor and Wendy Zammit. And another is Afterlife Experiments, Breakthrough Scientific Evidence of Life After Death by Professor Gary Schwartz. But what about so many other scientists, one might ask? Shouldn't they all be interested in gaining some understanding and answers on this subject? One would think so, but in this day and age, scientists usually need to be funded before they can devote their time to any form of research. And very few find anyone willing to sponsor any scientific research in this field. Many scientists are also too academic for their own good. They may think they are clever and too clever to investigate what they have already convinced themselves can't possibly be true. They wouldn't be funded. They think it pointless and can't be true for reasons such as those mentioned earlier. And they are also frightened of being ridiculed by their peers. So life goes on and on, with the vast majority of people cut adrift from the truth of their origins. This is the greatest and most important conspiracy of them all. This conspiracy, or at least its consequences, causes people to live in uncertainty, and in so many cases with a fear of death. A fear that is totally and utterly without foundation, because there is no death. Nobody has or ever will truly die. They cannot. We are eternal spirit beings, temporarily experiencing through physical bodies. When the bodies are no longer viable for use, we vacate them and go home from where we came in the first place. I have a lovely little book called Life After Death by Neville Randall, which incorporates a collection of dialogues received direct from spirit communications in direct voice, sitting with the medium Leslie Flint. One short comment that I very much enjoyed reading was communicated by a Mary Ivan. She said, "Do you know, No one need fear dying because it's the most wonderful thing. It's the most exciting thing that could ever happen to anyone. No one need ever worry about it. That was her comment. In my opinion, when enough people wake up to the fact that death is an illusion that should in no way be feared, then we will see a great shift away from all overemphasis of material wealth and greed. We will then find that the society will become more cooperative and caring for each other, and that resources will be more fairly shared, so that none shall be left to go without while another basks in luxury. Because then we will all realise that life here on earth is just a short adventure, a vacation in effect, from the spirit world. People will also learn that it is how we live that will determine our initial future conditions in the spirit world I'm talking about. It is of great importance that people realise that life does have consequence. Mostly, and for most of us, because most of us are reasonably kind, nice, kind people, we find ourselves returning to the wonderful conditions Mary Ivan alludes to. But this is not always so. The spirit dimensions include multiple realms or spheres, and some are downright nightmarish, dark and depressive. And those who have lived wicked or evil or cruel lives on earth are far more likely to gravitate to one of these abodes, at least for a time. That is, until they learn better and change, and by their own efforts progress to nicer realms. These warnings, not threats, because we are all free spirits, should be recognised. We reap according to how we have sown. My book, Escape from Hell, outlines the consequences of a misspent earthly life. The greatest and most important conspiracy of them all is keeping the majority of people in ignorance of their true self. Recognise this and do not be fooled. Awaken to the reality, your real status in this universe as an eternal spirit being. Do not fear death. Do not be afraid of disease or dying. Do not end your own life, because that is not the answer. It can lead to one of the lesser spirit realms. But be a free-thinking and living spirit and awaken others, because this raises our own energies and status, but do so because you know it is knowledge worth sharing. Thank you for listening.